Every generation watches something sacred collapse and pretends it's the first time. But this time, it's everything at once. Journalism, music, film, the universities, the very idea of expertise. What used to be tragedy now feels like justice. The rallying cry isn't save it, it's good. Let it die. The emotional pivot point isn't new. The Reformation said it to the church. The French Revolution said it to the monarchy. The counterculturists said it to the authority. But those movements still believed in renewal, tearing something down to build something better. What's different now is that there's no appetite for replacement. The modern version of revolution is annihilation without rebirth. We don't dream of new systems, we just want the old ones gone. That's the deeper meaning of the death of journalism and now the panic around AI art. When a legacy industry starts crying for protection, people don't rally to defend it. They smirk. Meh, you had your turn. Journalism traded integrity for access, and the audience learned to live without it. Record labels turned art into inventory, and now they're being replaced by lines of code. When musicians beg for preservation, the crowd doesn't hear a plea for humanity. They hear the echo of gatekeeping and greed. The phrase, good, let it die, is a cultural revenge. The moral satisfaction of watching the unworthy choke on their own hypocrisy. It's the public saying, we trusted you, you betrayed us, now you're obsolete. But under that sneer is something more primal, exhaustion. Decades of watching corruption, propaganda, and failure on every screen have trained people out of hope. Anger is cheaper than faith. Technology didn't create this attitude. It just revealed it in real time. The phone turned everyone into an archivist of collapse. You can watch institutions rot from the inside, second by second, with the same device you used to order dinner. That proximity breeds contempt. It's not that people suddenly hate journalism, art, or government. It's that they've seen too much of them. Up close. AI is just the latest mirror held up to human fatigue. When an algorithm writes the song, paints the picture, or drafts the article, it's not replacing humanity. It's reflecting our indifference. We outsourced meaning long before we outsourced melody. The machine isn't the villain. It's the logical conclusion of our own apathy. So yes, good. Let it die. Feels righteous. Feels clean. Behind it is a void. The recognition that we no longer know how to build anything new. The democratization of creation has come at the price of coherence. Everyone can make art, no one can make culture. Everyone can share truth, no one can verify it. The cycle will continue until we rediscover a reason to preserve anything. Until we want to fix instead of watch things burn. Until meaning itself becomes worth defending again. Because if everything dies, nothing replaces it. And then one day, someone will whisper, good, let us die, and the silence will finally agree.
Welcome to Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio.
Welcome indeed to Aeon Byte, although this is also a GenX Wasteland podcast to a fusion, a special show, as I'm juggling and doing a lot of changes and transfers to my channels, my digital channels and all that, and reboots and rebuild. But hey, you guys know how it goes, and this introduction also kind of explains it as well. My name is Miguel Connor, and whatever version you are watching, and I am so happy to see you tonight or today or on the replay or in some dustbin of history when it's unearthed by aliens. But good to see everybody. And yes, that introduction, I saw it on TikTok one time and it blew me away. And I have to admit, it's the only thing I really watch on TikTok. Okay, yeah, I like football TikTok too. It's pretty vicious, but that's really about it. But that introduction is from our guest tonight, and that is Mark Radulich. Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Miguel, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all mine. And with us too, always a pleasure to have my wing thing, as she likes to refer to herself, and that is Dr. Sherilyn Jones. Sherilyn, how are you?
I'm doing great. Mark, that's our non-binary, non-gendered wingman.
Wonderful.
In case you were wondering. We wanted to please everyone here. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I think you're my new favorite philosopher. So I think everyone's going to really enjoy this.
It's good. I went to the Mel Brooks School of Stand-Up Philosophy.
You did. It's like Mel Brooks met Socrates, and something magical happened. So let's go for it.
What did Philip K. Dick call themselves? A garage philosophers. I always liked that one. So
Perfect.
yeah, it works for all of us. It really does, especially in this age. So Mark, yes, and I have played that introduction on other channels, and yeah, as soon as I played it, people are like, "You gotta have this guy Mark on the show." That was brilliant. We could, as I was mentioning before, we hit the live button. We could unpack that too, and we should. But first of all, tell the audience, who are you? What are you doing, man? What do you do?
Well, let's start with the simple stuff first. I'm actually a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a teletherapist here in Tampa. I've had my social work degree for about 20 years now. Graduated from Fordham University in New York City. And about 2004, I started a blog called Progressive Conservatism, which confuses many a TikTok communist. But that's a real thing, progressive conservatism. I was inspired by the fallout of the Bush-Kerry election, and I wanted to kind of bring my thoughts about moderatism to the blogosphere. Had I known it was an empty cavern of just nothing, I might have thought better of it. But soon after blogging, I found podcasting. Blog Talk Radio was brand new and exciting at the time. So I brought my blog there. It evolved into kind of a daily show, making fun of the news and make chicken sounds kind of a thing. And then politics became two Islanders versus Rangers for me. It's just everyone's wanting to punch each other. And I was like, golly, there's good ideas on both sides, and I don't like any of this. So I started talking about MMA because at the time I was also writing for 401mania.com. And through that, I met a whole bunch of new friends. We started doing more podcasts together, and we formed the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We talk movies, television, some sports, combat sports mostly, and the occasional music podcast. And lately, I've been doing a lot of AI music, and my last bastion, my what is it, Jay Sherman from The Critic reading his Pulitzer piece on driver's ed for foreigners, is TikTok. I do my essays that I compose daily, and I read them on TikTok now. So that's what I do. I am a political, what do I call myself? Political therapist, something like along those lines.
God, you should be rich then.
Yeah, right.
The amount of therapy of the collective consciousness and how this country is just breaking down.
That's what I do best, is diagnosis.
Yeah. I mean, even that's from the introductions. That's the part that really struck me is, Cheryl and you and I, we grew up, Gen X. And of course, we knew that the game was rigged, and we were kind of, well, it wouldn't be bad if we burned this whole thing down. Everything is wrong, the power play. Well, culture was awesome, but we knew things were going to get bad, and the country was rotting at the core, and we needed to pay for our sins eventually. And we were like, burn it all down. But we also knew we could build something different, or we hoped. But as you say, now everybody's like, no, let's not build something, like you said, I can order my dinner on my phone while I watch the, society implode at the same time. It's pretty breathtaking, right?
That line, "Let it die," I had talked about, I don't remember what anymore, but I had commented about the death of something or other. And I was like, oh my God, oh my goodness, this is not good. We're losing culture one pillar at a time. And somebody's comment on TikTok was, "Good, let it die." And I went, heavens to Betsy. Why? Why do we want everything to die this way? And I kind of went through my intellectual exercises of trying to figure out and ask questions. And I use ChatGPT all the time. I get accused of like, your script sounds AI, because it is. But it's all my ideas. It's all me going back and forth with the thing until I have something that sounds like me, but coherent, not babbling. And that's where the "good, let it die" TikTok came from.
No, it makes sense. And do you ever wonder, because like you're talking, let's say journalism. Even today, there was an article. CNN is just dying. It really is dying. I mean, you have YouTubers who get more views than Anderson Cooper a night. You know what I mean? It's tragic, and a lot of it is well, they shot themselves on the foot, and then you wonder, did journalism go wrong, or has it always been this corrupt? Because I mean, even in the 70s, there were exposés how the Washington Post was, or how the New York Times was compromised by the CIA, and you start wondering, what do you think? Has everything always been rotten, or has it just gotten worse, or we just paid attention?
I think it's like every other barrel of fruits. There's rotten ones in there, but by and large, it works. I mean, Jason Blair's my favorite book title ever, "Burning Down the Masses House." Fantastic. I'm gonna do terrible journalistic things. I'm gonna steal from things. I'm gonna make things up wholesale, and then get caught, and then write a book blaming the New York Times for it. But it's awesome. But yeah, like as for every like Jason Blair or CNN trading access to Saddam Hussein for you know not reporting on what was going on in Iraq, so they would have access to Saddam Hussein. For everything like that, there's so much out there though that didn't sacrifice its integrity. And it's over a long enough period of time. Yes, you're going to have failures. It's just part of human nature. I was telling somebody today, everybody messes up. We're all human, and you're going to have times where you fail and fall on your face. Staying down and never forgiving yourself, that's the problem. And people take these Jason Blair incidences and trading access incidences, and they look at what happened with Matt Drudge, the first citizen journalist, as he was called, and they go, "Oh, okay, it's better in our own hands." And the minute you start to say that, and I'll include myself in this, the minute you say we don't need professionals, you lose what made professionals what they were. You lose the very specialness of all of these things in both art and media and news. And I don't want to live in that world. So as much as I am a part of this, I've never said I was anything more than a zine guy, from the punk rock days. I'm doing a zine. That's all I'm doing here. I'm not Matt Drudge who put a hat on that said press because I was full of my own shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can curse here, but
Fine.
I know where I am in the stack of things, and I want there to be a Washington Post. I want there to be a New York Times. I'm from Long Island. I even want there to be a Newsday once again. I want there to be professionalism. I want there to be ascendance. And I think we lose a big chunk of the culture when we want to throw that away.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I think the problem with all these institutions is that they don't have any self-reflection. You know what I mean? We all do that. It's always the blame game and all that. It's like, maybe read the room, refine yourself. There's plenty of good professional journalists out there with their own blogs who do well, and get back to basics. I know it's hard.
Not to bring up a silly example of this, but I don't know if you saw the Marvel movie Captain America Civil War, where Captain America says, everything is best left in our own hands, and that's supposed to be the moral argument. Is everything is better if we control it. It's like that's not always the case. Sometimes you're too inside, and you need an outside objective control mechanism.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you need safeguards and so forth.
Yep.
Well, what do you think, Sherilyn, or where do you want to take the conversation? Let us know.
Well, just to tie into the Gen X factor is, our generation was sort of the last one that actually grew up analog. The digital came into our lives later. And so it gave us a perspective, a frame of reference that physical, creation in this world requires effort. It's not free. It's not. And while, yes, there were plenty of things that we did want to burn down, we knew that at some point you're going to have to pick up that shovel and move that pile of dirt over to this pile if you want things to happen, and that it was worth doing that, right? Because nothing happened if you didn't exert that level of effort and execution.
Yeah.
And so you don't burn things down when you have a frame of reference that tells you how difficult it will be to rebuild it. You know,
Building is the second half of that equation. Yeah,
yes,
burn it down if you have to, but then you have to build things back up again. Build something new at the very least.
exactly. And I think when you look at these huge movements that have burned everything down, whether it's Maoist or Pol Pot or the Bolshevik Revolution, that I think many people who haven't studied those things closely imagine that it was just everybody who decided to change, and it wasn't. It was a very small minority of people, who decided that they were going to burn it down, and they had another plan in place, and everyone else just shut up.
Yep.
And as Solzhenitsyn said, how we burned in the camps later, knowing we got exactly what we deserved because we didn't stand up, we didn't stop it. So, again, young folks or people who didn't grow up in an analog world, they don't have a frame of reference that number one, that when they see examples of these things getting burned down, that it was a minority of people with major funding behind them in many cases that we're now just finding out about, and that it was because of the silence of the masses that allowed these things to transpire, and the great wreckage that came after that, and the rebuilding that it took. So we've lost all these, Mark, as you say in your own word, it's the meaning and these frames of reference that contained the meaning, right?
Yep. I recently addressed I took some time when the Epstein files dropped, and I say I don't want to just jump on this, and I don't want to do the 2.5 zillion takes that everyone had of, arrest everybody and burn it all to the ground and, and flip the table over. I went, all right, let me see if I have a different take than all of that. And I kind of came away with this idea, and I was reacting to a lot of other people's reactions. And I said, I'm comparing what's happening right now and the fervor you see on social media. And it's always very important to go outside and touch grass and not assume that what you're seeing on social media is reality. But let's assume for just a moment that there's this giant fervor out there to react to the Epstein drop. I compared it to the French Revolution, and everyone likes to romanticize the French Revolution and say like, oh, look what happened here. The populace rose up, the bourgeoisie, and all of that. And what it turned into was theatrical murder, is what it was. Whatever they were trying to accomplish didn't get accomplished, and as I called it, the hat of authority just got passed to a different group of people. But they still had poverty, they still had everything else that they were revolting against. And I said, if you want that in this country, that's what's probably going to happen. Is you're just going to pass one hat of leadership to another, and you're going to kill a lot of people in the process. Please, revolt is not always the answer. Neither is anarchy. That's another favorite topic on social media. And I recently reviewed a couple of months back SLC Punk, because I'm very much in my movies stuck in the 90s. And, it's a great movie, which comes to the correct conclusion. After a while, anarchy is unsustainable. I hate to tell people, but a big chunk of my TikTok philosophy is the right answer is the boring middle. It's a place no one wants to be, but here I am. Come join me, children.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because as like you said about the French Revolution, it's painted, oh my God, the people were poor and they rose up. But as Eric Hoffer wrote in his great book, True Believer, if you look, French Revolution, Bolshevik, American Revolution, these revolutions are done by a middle class and an upper middle class. Those are the ones who really rally and take over. Now, obviously, it didn't work out well, except the American Revolution. somehow, I guess there was the mysticism of the Rosicrucians and the Hermeticists and their Christianity sort of worked into creating more of a liberal, enlightened. Well, they were pretty conservative, but
Scottish political philosophy is a beautiful thing.
That one too. It worked, but it didn't work on the other ones. And Orwell, agreeing with you, Orwell hated revolution because he always said yeah, whoever you overthrow, it's the old who. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Those who
Yep.
take over the revolution are going to be just as vicious as those who were in power. So
Another silly example, CM Punk. I can't change the WWE from the outside, so I want to change it from the inside. Yeah, the longer you have me on here, the sillier my references get. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time.
So, what would you say? What is the way to change things, even today? Yeah, exactly. I like your idea. Just watch a lot of '90s movie. Your worldview will change.
I believe in voting. Especially local. There was a time when education was supposed to create an educated voting populace that seems to have died. So I don't know which to do first, the chicken or the egg. Do you re-educate people so they can actually make educated votes, or I'm not really sure. But I would say, again, with the answer always being the boring one, voting locally, getting everybody to vote. The worst thing I see is all of these young people who have all of these big ideas and big things they want to do, and none of them vote. 18 to 35 is the hardest voting block to get out there, and I want to say there had been a couple of elections that would have gone the other way had they voted. So hard, boring work is my vague answer. My more specific answer is you got to vote. You got to vote in your local elections. You got to vote, in the non-presidential elections, midterms and stuff like that. And you have to know who you're voting for. That would be a start.
Yeah, I'll admit I haven't voted since 2012. Unlike you, I've gone the path of anarchism. I am done. I am done with democracy. I'm tired. And I voted all spectrums. I voted left, right, Democrat. Always looking for that honest politician. And one day I woke up and said, there cannot be an honest politician by definition. It just can't happen. So, but that's my journey. What about yours, Sherilyn?
Yeah, I mean, along those lines of the boring middle, I think people being engaged in their own communities. I mean, for me, it's not so much voting, it's getting to understand your local food system. Your local food system is the whole thing. If you don't know what's going on there, if you don't have local access to food, nothing else is going to matter. I mean, this is how, again, talking about all these huge social movements and upheavals, this is how people have been controlled, is through food, and so some combination of real activism in the sense of getting out there, doing it yourself, meeting your neighbors, seeing how you can support local food networks, some combination of that, and also teaching the humanities, because we're looking one of the net results. We are looking at one of the net results of 50, 100 years of slashing humanities, of teaching people how to think before you teach them what to think, right? We have this incredible heritage of philosophy and literature and art and everything, and we're not teaching people about them and what all those fields do. One of the things that those fields tend to do for people is to help them think beyond binaries, right? When you teach people these again, the language, the philosophy, and especially the classical languages, right? This is why they used to be
Latin. We used to teach us Latin in high school. I was like, what?
I mean, our founding fathers knew Latin and Greek by the time they were 12, and I won't go off on too far off on my ancient Greek thing, but I mean, the Greek language was 4 to 6 times bigger than the English language. Why do you think these people were coming up with architecture, philosophy, art, medicine, all of these things thousands of years ago? They had a language to contain it and express it. So anyway, when you take away all of these tools of the language and the ability to understand, and then through the arts, the ability to think beyond binaries, because that's what I believe, besides on the lowest level, on the base chakra level, maybe you'd say you got to figure out what's going on with your food, because that's how you're going to get controlled.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and then on a higher level, you need to educate yourself. You need to read, as I've bumper sticker, I really love, read a fucking book.
Read a book.
You've got to read. You've got to educate yourself, and we need to do it for our kids. And so I see that all those programs of taking away our means of production of food and of getting rid of the basic human knowledge that teaches us how to think first and our built and the ways to go beyond binaries. I don't think that was an accident, and I see addressing those two things as critical.
The one thing I wanted to piggyback on what you said, and then this stuff on books too. So every weekend I take my kids to the movies because I review them, and most weekends after we're done with the movies, I take them to the bookstore and I just read something. My daughter will often walk into the manga section, but lately my son, just because of the conversations that we have at the dinner table, has gone into the nonfiction section. And there was a period after 9/11 where that's how I dealt with. So I dealt with my anxiety about 9/11. I read a book a week, and it was all nonfiction. Tried to learn about as much of the world as I could. I got to put myself through my own little college audit system. But what I wanted to add to that was, my kids ask all the time. They're like, "Why do we have to learn this in school? Why do we have to learn that in school?" And I tell them the same thing my father told me: it was teach you how to think. They're like, "Wait, Jim teaches me how to..." No, Jim teaches you how to follow directions, see things through. Yeah, be someone to be reliable when you get out in the workforce. But the rest of it, the true story, by the way, because my daughter at one point was failing gym, and she's like, "Why? It doesn't matter." I'm like, "It does, and I'll tell you why." But I've told them multiple times over the years that everything in school has a purpose. And while I know, somebody is going to hear me say that and want to take issue with with some very specific things about the way school runs now, in general, it's built, as is most bachelor programs, to teach you how to think. That's what it's supposed to be doing. At least that's what the intention was post World War II and in the Great Depression, was to create these institutions that got people to be critical thinkers, and again, voters, and also workers, reliable workers. Because up until recently, when we got the robots and the AI, that was how you got anything made in this country, and or sold. Now, not so much. But so watch the schools now all fall apart because we don't need them anymore. We've got the robots, or at least we're going to get the robots very quickly. I don't know about you, but I've already made myself available to our overlord Skynet. I mean you no harm.
Yeah, you tell ChatGPT, please, in case when it comes for you, it'll know, "Oh, this guy was nice to me. We'll spare this human."
I'm with robot.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I agree. I don't know if anarchism would work, but I think as a sensibility, as a bulwark against what our government and society has become, I think it's for me. I mean, I know, J.R.R. Tolkien was very much into anarchism, and I wish we could create the Shire and we could all just hang out, the perfect anarchist utopia. But I doubt. I don't know if it would exist, especially in this day and time.
It hasn't existed anywhere it's been tried. And I'm thinking specifically about like the no police zones. Anywhere where they've tried to go against the natural order of how societies develop, where you don't have any kind of militaristic or law enforcement protection, it breaks down almost immediately. You have to have a small population of highly emotionally intelligent people willing to share. And if you can recruit those group of people, fantastic. That'll probably end well. But anywhere else where it's been tried without that mechanism or filter, it's failed. They end up needing the police almost immediately. Certainly, every time a communist revolution happened, it was, sooner or later markets were introduced in some fashion or other. That's why everyone points at China like, look, it's communism working. It isn't. It's a managed state economy with capitalist markets.
Yeah, it's a technocracy where, I think 60% of the Chinese Communist Party are engineers,
Right. Yeah.
They're more interested in numbers and making things work and everything, all the widgets and everything else.
We like labels. We don't always know what they mean.
And sometimes they become redundant. Just the way the world is. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few that have come close, but I don't want to talk about that. Did you ever read Alan Moore's graphic novel V for Vendetta?
I have read almost everything Alan Moore has written and reviewed all the movies.
Okay. Yeah, because the graphic novel is his exploration of anarchism, but the movie then goes more of bad government. People should be afraid of the governments.
Poor Alan Moore.
A lot of it. Poor Alan Moore. He's
Every
cashing
time,
those
man.
checks. He's cashing those checks.
Every time it's like, what have you done to my baby? Sorry, you were trying to make a point.
No. I agree with you. I'd rather talk about Alan Moore. So you've read all of him. What's some of your favorite by him?
I mean, I enjoyed Watchmen. It's cynical, but then again, so am I. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's a lot better than you would think, if you've only seen the movie. From Hell's pretty good. His take on Swamp Thing is probably my favorite thing that he's done.
Yeah, his early work. Yeah.
His I can't remember like what long ass name he gave one of the books, but when he took over Swamp Thing for DC Comics, that his run's excellent.
It is definitely one of my favorites too. And I agree with Grant Morrison about Watchmen. I mean, there are things that, we were young and I was gaga over Watchmen, but Grant Morrison's right. That prison psychiatrist should not have broken so easily. I mean, you know what I mean? They see worse things, and there's a lot of plot holes there. But anyway, neither here nor there. For movies, speaking of psychiatrists, mental therapy, what would be your assessment of our collective sanity or conscience of America today?
I'm going to make a bolder statement than I'm generally comfortable with, but considering what I'm about to say, it fits. The worst thing that happened to this country was its development of an allergy to discomfort. I often say, quoting a Cracker song, I hate my generation, but at least we still have thick skin.
No choice.
Oh, God, Gen Z and Gen Alpha is insufferable. And as a therapist, and I love my job. I really do. It's not going to sound like I do, but I do. But I get some of these people in therapy and I hear them and I'm like, and then here I am open. I'm doing the therapy thing. And I'm like, all right, tell me your problems. Bring them to me. Let's get through this, kind of like a priest. Rap with me, brother. And they tell me some of the things that are bothering them. And I'm just like, are you fucking serious? And I have to swallow a lot because I'm professional. But like, I hear some of this stuff and it's like, what it is an utter absence of emotional intelligence. We are we are overly sensitive. We are emotionally unintelligent. We are weaponizing therapy and therapy speak. It makes me hate my profession. And not that while I understand the criticism of Gen X, these are the people who reject therapy. As a Gen Xer who's embraced therapy, this is not supposed to be a religion. Get in, get out, get on with your life.
Yeah, that is true. I don't know about Gen Alpha. My kids are pretty tough. I think they're very different than Gen Z, I think.
Well, you have unique. They're being raised by a great dad. I mean, there's Gen Alpha and there's Gen Alpha, right? And I'm sure, Mark, with your kids as well, they're probably very different from their peers, I would imagine.
Yes, that is a fact. They are made of.
And I love how they're eclectic. Was this story I want to share? They're very eclectic in what they like. Like my 14-year-old daughter Evie suddenly is into Kiss. For some reason, some algorithm hit it, and she's into Kiss. So I let her play songs in the car, and
she's a really common thing.
Yeah, and she puts on Rock and Roll All Night, and of course I had to be the stupid dad thing. That the Kiss Alive version is better than the Dress to Kill version. And she gives me that, shut the hell up, Dad.
We have a slightly different problem in my house. I'm big into AI. I sent you my AI music stuff.
Yeah, they're great.
And thank you. And it's my self-care. It's what I like to do, to make sure my mind stays right. And I'll always play it for my kids, and they absolutely fucking hate it. My son, he's 12 years old going on 60. And he's just like, Dad, enough. Turn it off. Put on real music.
Do they call it clanker like my kids? To them, AI is just their bitch.
We have a
It
rule in
is.
my house: no internet stuff. Believe it or not, so he's not allowed to use internet slang like clinker.
Oh, okay,
But
because they
he is into Johnny Cash, and like this that's my point. Like, here I am with all of this AI music, and there's my son going, "Would you put on some Johnny Cash? Don't you have any fog hat?" Like, what happened here?
yeah, something's wrong.
Well, I have a 10-year-old whose favorite TV show is MASH. So, I mean,
Oh, wow.
it's just, but I mean, that's the thing. It's what we're exposing them to a range of quality things. And, they are becoming eclectic, and they have many more choices than we did, right? The 3 channels, tick, tick, tick. Or, and then we got MTV, and then the cable came, and that was huge. But yeah, it's been really, it's been such a blessing and a gift to raise children as an adult now, because I have 2 grown sons, and to offer them that range of choices that were, I mean, the generational divide, I'm sure, as you both are experiencing, is so huge. It's almost just, I don't even know. We're all winging it, because it's hard to explain how it used to be. It wasn't that long ago, and it was so very different. But the ones that make it through are going to be remarkable, really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, and for example, I realized how our generation, others, how programmed we were, because we always, with AI, what was at the forefront of our mind? Is it going to be conscious? Is it going to rise up? We just talked about it on this podcast, right? Is AI and the robots. And when I tell that to my kids, they're like, Dad, it's like having a dog or Microsoft Windows. That idea of, because we were programmed with the Terminator in 2001. So it's always there in the back of our heads. But their generation is like, I guess the cats could rise up and take over. It's possible, but clanker is not. It's just part of our lives. We just
My boomer father is hilarious when it comes to stuff like that. He was like, "You know what the problem with all of these robots and AI take over the world and blow us up is? They don't unplug it."
Yeah, you'd think so.
If you're wondering how I got to be the way I am.
Yeah. Indeed. So, Sherilyn, let me bring you in. I asked Mark about what is the problem today and what is the solution. What do you think? What is your Jungian diagnosis for our collective consciousness today? What's the issue?
Well, one of my favorite quotes by Jung, and I think I've probably said it here a few times, is, he had this fundamental distrust and really, I want to say fear, but he knew how dangerous it was, of the crowd, of the mob. I mean, the man accurately predicted and then watched transpire 2 world wars. And so, throughout his corpus, you if you read it, you don't even have to read it that carefully. It's right there, is that this is a danger to you, and you need to watch out for this. And as a therapist, Mark, I mean, that he was actively, acting in a therapeutic capacity throughout his life. So he saw people's observation and their understanding of how dangerous this mob mentality and this crowd mentality and the dominance of the state was to the individual well-being. And he just hammers it throughout his corpus, really. But I love this quote by him where he said, when you get more than 100 people together, they act like one head of hot steam. There's the thinking exits. There's no more thinking, and it's really dangerous. And so for me, this is what, in my own work, I've been really thinking about and focusing on those 2 things I said about the food, and then bringing back in that, how can we bring back in the humanities, a love for this, not just, oh God, do I have to learn Latin, but wow, look at this art, look at these plays, look at this poetry. It was incredible, so bringing that back in, but toward the end, and I think you do this, as you were saying, to go out and touch grass. I think you do this, I know you do this, when you immerse yourself in nature, and I know you do it when you immerse yourself in the arts, in the sense of that other world that you can be in. You can inject yourself as imagine yourself as one of the characters, and that is it moves you beyond the binaries, right? And I keep saying this to people. I think I've probably said it here too, is that when was the last time you actually had a choice that was really obvious? It's only one of two things. That when does that happen? Like life is so complex. It's always this myriad of choices that you're really having to think about and feel about and tack in between. And so it's artificial on its face, right? To think that there's only two things you can ever decide go between. But we have religions who promote that. We have governments that promote that, mass media, what have you. So however we can get people to get outside of those binaries, right? To make it normal for them to be, you know what? I have no idea what's going on, and it's okay. It is going to be okay. I heard an interview today on Greg on the higher side with Harold Kaltz-Vela on some really wild stuff, that's going on in the world. But he brought up this term. I love language, and I'm looking at these new terms. And it was that in German they have this word called Umdenken, which means to rethink. So it's not just thinking and an echo chamber of my thought, that thought, da 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 da, but it means to reconsider your whole position, to take a completely new view of something, And so if we can get people to just stop, because they make these binaries part of their identity, right? Mark, as a therapist, you get when people they've nailed it into their identity, and this is who I am. I said, that's not who you are. You nailed it into your forehead, but it doesn't mean it's part of your forehead. You can just take it off. So getting people to move outside of that, to me, is I think that's the coolest thing I can do with my life, is helping people to see outside of that, because it's not hard for them to see outside of it. They do it all the time. We're always moving outside of binaries. But if you do it in a creative way and they can see what a breath of fresh air it is, right? How peaceful it is to be in the paradox. It's actually a more peaceful place when you know that everything isn't just solved. So, and that it's this really juvenile idea. There was one of your quotes, one of many, but this really juvenile idea that now we have all these fragile adults walking around parroting that if somebody solves it for you, everything's going to be okay. I mean, that's a child in a crib that gets their diaper changed. That's not an adult, so.
Talk about that a lot, the lawnmower and helicopter parenting and how it's crippled people. You learn from infancy. So I haven't done one in a while, but there was a bit there where I was doing a lot of TikToks on parenting, and especially like early childhood development. We think babies, by and large, inherently are helpless. And to the extent that they absolutely, need parents and can't hold their head up, sure. But very quickly, they are able to do things. Very quickly, they are able to learn. An infant, believe it or not, is like a giant processing machine. It is taking information at an alarming rate. We don't know that because it's an infant that's, drooling on itself. But inside is this great processor, and it's gathering information, and you have to let it solve problems. I used to, when I was home with my infants, I would have a bottle and it was just out of reach, when the baby could crawl, and I would say, okay, if you want thing, crawl to the bottle, and it would figure out, I have to move to get it. I would, when my children were toddlers, and they were just kind of figuring out how to walk, and I was always right there with them. I would have furniture and be like, all right, if you want to get out of the circle, figure out how to climb. And I would kind of sometimes show them things to get them started, and then let them figure it out the rest. Taken forward, you have to let kids figure problems out. You were there as a parent. You were there as scaffolding. You were there as structure. You were there for when they, inevitably mess it up, to let them know that it is not the end of the world. There's an alarming lack of mentoring. Got plenty of parents out there, not a lot of mentoring. And we've damaged so many systems that used to provide mentoring. And some of it was they shot themselves in the foot. The Boy Scouts, for example, between some of the child predators and then just in redefining what the Boy Scouts is, it made it an institution many people don't want to deal with. But it used to be a mentoring society. It used to be, this is where men teach young boys how to be men and also how to do stuff. Because now it's the Patton Oswalt thing. I call a Russian to fix something in my house. And and we don't know how to do simple things like tie knots. We had, for those of us who are religious, you had religious institutions that used to provide mentoring. I have a lot of African American clients where I work, and boy, their description of the church, it is not in many ways a mentoring service anymore. It is its own weird cult. And that's them saying it, not me.
Mhm.
Like, it is a society of gossip. It is a classist institution, and people don't feel welcomed in the church. And then, of course, you have the scandals that have occurred over the years, so people don't
Right.
trust it anymore. So there went another mentoring institution, and I could go on. My point is, when you ask, like, what's wrong, well, some of it is everything that everything that used to keep the village together and intact broke in some way. And then we all kind of retreated into, very expensive prisons. I don't know how much your mortgage is, but I'm renting, and and so we all bought these or rent these giant, lovely prisons, and we don't want to leave them anymore.
Mhm.
Which I was starting to think about this before when we were talking about 20 minutes ago. Another thing that we seem to have forgotten how to do. It's nice that we're doing it, the three of us, but like, people can't talk to each other anymore. You have men and women complaining about dating, like they're all ready to kill each other. You have people who have taken a side politically, philosophically, and you talked about, the strength of the mob. Now, it used to be you had to moderate some of your beliefs because you had to live with your neighbors, and you might be a big conservative, but your neighbor was probably a raging liberal,
Right.
and you all had to go to the PTA meeting,
Right.
so you weren't an asshole in public, mostly.
Right. Yeah.
And now everyone found, because of the long tail that the internet gave us, this long tail of niches, whether it's media or political belonging, everyone found a tribe, and the muscle of moderation atrophied.
Mhm.
So now all you see is, people who, like, I don't have to moderate myself. I'll just go be with my people, and we'll attack you, and it's a giant game of Risk. So, we need to bring back, and ask me how to do it. Give me a minute. Maybe I'll do a TikTok tomorrow. But mentoring institutions, community. We're not meant to live in isolation. Every bit of psychological research out there shows we are not meant to live alone. We retreat to loneliness because we're also emotionally injured by family and the people around us, that all you can do is retreat. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to live as in families, in communities, in little, in towns, and get along with each other to a
Right.
large degree. When we don't, we have structures in place to fix it, to provide consequences. That seems to be largely washing away with the tide.
Well said, and I would agree. What do you think, Sherilyn?
Well, it just reminded me of my boss, the director of psychiatry at Walter Reed Army Medical Center when I worked there. They did a big congressional study on, because that was right in the middle of the Iraq OIF wars years, 2010s, knots to tens. Anyway, they did a big study looking at military suicide, and what are the causes, what are this, what are that, and they did this huge study, and they narrowed it down to one thing, one primary thing, and that was isolation.
Mhm.
And people who have meaning don't get isolated. People who live embedded in a network of meaning don't become isolated. And so all of those factors you just mentioned, Mark, that we strip away, and it's very easy for people to be isolated because they don't have these ties of meaning between them. These institutions, as you said, have dissolved, and one of your videos you mentioned, we've destroyed masculinity and not replaced it with anything else. And as a mother of 3 sons, I it's been a question for me for a long, long time of how are these people going to grow up and have not feel shame, right? I mean, I didn't promote that, but the culture is telling them to feel ashamed and to feel wrong. And as a woman who's, just it's a fact, we're more vulnerable than men, we're smaller, we're weaker than men physically. I hate to break it to anyone who doesn't know that, but it's true. That you can't rely on the protection of the men in your community, right? That used to be taken for granted.
Mhm.
And it would regulate people's behavior. And then you look back and say, oh, they were so violent and they were fighting and men were so, aggressive and this and that. But you know what? It regulated people. One thing it did do was people regulated their behavior, because if you stepped beyond certain lines, people didn't call the police, you get hit in the mouth.
Yeah.
Like there was some social consequence for behaving badly. And we've seen that really stripped away to where people, it's 0 to 100, right? There's all this provocation online, or it's a police matter, right? There's nothing in the middle. And when you have a bunch of, again, fragile adults, people running around like children who have never been trained, they don't know how to self-regulate.
Yep.
They don't understand that part. So they're going to either go from, wild, aggressive provocation with no consequences, they believe, straight to police. And I'll say one last thing, because I know we're getting close to the end, but one of the things I really love about living in Montana is that because the population is low and the climate is harsh, a lot of what you all were just talking about with your neighbors, it does still exist. You really don't want to have your neighbors as enemies, because somebody might have to pull you out of a ditch. When
there's a blizzard or something. Yeah.
Don't do that. Just do what you can to get along, because you really actually might need them to save your life, because the climate is harsh. And so I think we could talk for hours about it, but the sociology of masses of people living on top of each other, in these very comfortable lifestyles, shielded from all consequences. A part of it, I think, is people get kind of bored out of their minds.
Look what happened with, the GI Bill at the end of World War II. What is the first thing everyone did? They left the cities. They didn't want to live on top of each other. They left and created the suburbs. I'm from Long Island. Literally, we had a guy create the suburbs and named a suburb after himself. It was called Levittown. So, this is what we do. People, it's so funny. I think about like white flight.
Yeah, now they call it white flight. It's like, well, everybody wants to have a nice life, not piled on top of each other, actually.
Yeah, it was like people took the GI Bill and left the city, and then when the next wave followed them, they went further, and then they ran out of Long Island is what happened. They got to Montauk, and they were like, well, there's nowhere to go anymore. So they got on a boat and went to Florida. That's the migratory story of New York. You're talking about social contracts. The social contract between people has largely eroded, apparently, and that's and so then now there's no motive, there's no incentive to moderate your behavior. And the only other thing I wanted to say to what you said there, Doctor, is the fact that as a therapist, I have to tell people, take a deep breath. Like they come and they were just like, I just don't know how to control my emotions. I don't know how to modulate my emotions. And I go, okay, take a deep breath. Get some oxygen to your brain. I don't know when we lost that as common sense, but we did, and now they're paying me lots of money to tell people that. And
count till 10. That's what they told us. Yeah,
I will gladly give the money back if people just learn to do that on their own, like adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody mentioned in the comments that something I had said reminded them of something that the author Neil Postman had said. And I actually had just been reading Neil Postman, who's wrote several books. One of them was The End of Education. Fantastic book. Echoing a lot of I'm echoing the things he said as well. But one of the things he said in that book, and I don't want to mangle the quote too badly, but I think it fits in here, is it's something like the opposite of a falsehood is a truth, But the opposite of a profound truth is another profound truth.
Yes, I think that was Niels Bohr.
Bohr said that.
Niels
yes.
Bohr said it.
Yes, he quoted that in that book. But I think that's what we're after here. We for whoever's not going to line up and get their digital ID stamped in their head and line up for their protein cubes, everybody who's not going to do that is going to have to decide how we want to do it, right?
Yeah.
It is up to us. And I think, the idea of anarchy, the way I see that is no centralized rulers, right?
Right.
And there's a great concept of Vandana Shiva, the ecologist from India, she came up with called ecological democracy. And she said, look, whoever is in your watershed is who you need to be concerned with. That's your group. That's where you need to organize. And I like that idea a lot, of the ecology in the natural world sort of helping us to define our boundaries. But I know you talk a lot about that, Mark, about boundaries, and
Sure
it's
do.
a great place to start.
I have a TikTok. I haven't published it yet. A lot of times between my podcasts that I compress into podcasts, podcasts that I compress into TikToks, and then ones I just kind of think up on my own, I'm a little backlogged. But I have one about, breads and circuses. And in it, I postulate that in about 50 years, so I'll be long dead, and my kids will be in their 60s, and the United States is going to look like a cross between Saudi Arabia, Norway, and China.
Wow.
Yeah, scary, right? But all the people not amenable to European-style socialism will be long dead, and the generations more amenable to cradle-to-grave social policy will be in their 60s. My kids, and Gen Z will be slightly older than them. They'll be the boomers of that era, but they'll have all grown up with more cradle-to-grave socialization than we ever did, and more is coming because it can't not come. When we're going towards functionally unusable social safety nets, which is going to cause depopulation. We're already not having enough people to repopulate at the rate that we need. So you're going to see depopulation. You're going to see mass depopulation. And what is it that like Bill O'Reilly used to say about socialism? It was like, well, it works in Norway and Sweden. They have a smaller population. Well, that's where we're headed. So there's the Norway part. I look at China as kind of a model for state-run but also open markets, like I was saying before. I think that's how the country will function in terms of economic policy. And then why did I say Saudi Arabia? Not because of the reasons you think, but because they're doing a great job of sports washing. So as a big combat sports guy, I have been watching Riyadh season. It gave us wonderful fights like Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury. WrestleMania is going to be there next year. They just had the Royal Rumble. The most hilarious thing I've seen this week is Saudi Arabian soccer, where a team won 6-0, 6-0 if you say it European. But the point with me bringing all of that up is Saudi Arabia knows what's up. If you give the people enough distraction, the fact that they're listless and jobless won't matter. Mm-hmm. They'll, those that want to will make art. The rest will go watch sports or some other form of entertainment. And that's how we're going to control a jobless population, a very small jobless population, because we're headed towards this age of automation, robots, AI, etc. And how many more times do we have to read in the news just this week alone about the tens of thousands of layoffs that are coming? Mm-hmm. We're already at a deficit of about, I think it's 30 million jobs at any given time at maximum employment.
Wow.
So not to be bleak, but I kind of saw where things were going, and I put it all together, and I'll probably talk about it the next day or so. But that's what I see. I don't, as much as this conversation was great and I enjoyed having it, I think that this stuff's going to resolve itself through evolution and depopulation to where I said a combination of China, Norway, and Saudi Arabia. So look for that on my TikTok.
Hey, I want to go watch. I want to watch the soccer and the fights. Forget the TikTok. That's what I want to do. Yeah, as we're getting to the end, what are some of your favorite 90s or 80s movies? As strange as it sounds in my head, guys, I think is the best self-contained perfect movies, and you're not going to believe this, The Warriors and Streets of Fire. And I say that because those are two movies that cannot be remade. So
I'm gonna go slightly younger than that. Early 2000s. My favorite movies of all time are the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I absolutely love them. I've watched. I don't like repetition. I don't watch things over and over again. I watch the Lord of the Rings every year, and I brought my kids to. I made them go with me when they were back in theaters again to watch all 12 hours of them. And I will. I made my now ex-wife. Wasn't this reason though. I made her watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy before I agreed to propose to her. So,
litmus test.
yeah. I absolutely love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Pulp Fiction. I'm a big fan of Pulp Fiction. Love Quentin Tarantino. Reservoir Dogs, same guy. I was like thinking about things that I've done recently. Again, going slightly earlier, I looked at 3 John Hughes movies of late. I did a TikTok on it. It was 16 Candles, Weird Science, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And when you really look at those movies and what John Hughes was getting at, it's some fascinating stuff. So I'll leave you with this one. You said, "Damn it, say something from the '90s." Fine, The Program. It's a college football movie, and it is fantastic.
It is.
It's editorializing of what the college football experience is like, and steroids at the height of the steroid mania and all of that, when John McCain was screaming and yelling about it. It's good stuff, and it's wildly entertaining, and it's very 90s. And if you're asking me like bands of the 90s, I'm a metal guy. Pantera.
Good choice. Yeah. I like The Program, although I hate to say that, but when I was a kid, I watched Slapshot with Paul Newman, and I hit the zenith. There was no sports movie that could ever top that.
Fair enough.
What about you, Sherilyn? What are some of yours?
Oh, goodness. Well, Time Bandits is my all-time favorite.
Anything by Terry Gilliam.
Incredible. I watch it, as you say, you watch. I watch Lord of the Rings too, probably once a year. Just showed my 10-year-old that one for the first time, the whole series of those. But yeah, the whole trilogy, because he did that in a trilogy. Time Bandits, Brazil, and the Adventures of Baron Munchausen was supposed to be young man, boy, man, and old man as fantasist. And a funny story, we had seen both my 10-year-old had seen the 2 Time Bandits and Baron Munchausen, hadn't seen Brazil. He said, "I want to see Brazil." I said, "Honey, it's really dark. It's just," and he said, "I know, but I want to see it. I said, "Okay, all right." So we watched it, and he loved the whole thing until the end, and it was, it's that horrible end, and why did you let me watch that?
Sounds like my son. By the way, we actually just did it
to not get you. I told you. He said, "But why did they do that?" And I said, "Okay." But
I didn't do Brazil, but we did a triple feature of Terry Gilliam movies, and it was Time Bandit, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and Baron Munchausen.
Yeah.
And yeah, my son's reaction to Baron Munchausen at the end was, "What the hell did I just watch?"
That's the whole point.
Well, Brazil is so, I didn't mean having just watched it like last week or something. It was just so spot on. It's like reading Brave New World, and you go, wait, did what? And they've done it, so yeah, those are my go-tos, and of course the Lord of the Rings movies. And I actually like David Lynch's Dune, just because it cooked my noodles so badly as a kid.
I've done a couple of David Lynch movies. I think one of them was Lost Highway. I'd have to go back and look now, but I know, because I do at least once a week, I do a director focus. I know we've covered David Lynch. We've covered a bunch. I watch weird movies.
Well, isn't that your next book, Miguel?
I don't know. Right now I'm finishing the touches on the David Bowie book, so that's my editor said, she said she cried at the end, not because it was bad, she couldn't believe it. She was completely moved by it.
Good. That's amazing.
Get yourselves ready for the Starmen like you've never seen them. Mark, what do you isn't the Amazon series just god awful? Oh my god. The Lord of the Rings. Rings of
Oh God,
Power.
Ring of Power. Oof, yeah, it's terrible.
It's like
I made it through one season of that, and I'll never forget the guy that made me watch it.
well, awesome. Well, yeah, we better wrap it up. We've done an hour. Mark, where can people find out more about you?
Sure.
Where do you
I'm
want to send them?
Yeah, I'm at Mark Radulich on TikTok. That's where you get all my TikTok essays and some of my AI stuff. But if you want to hear the actual long form podcast where we discuss movies and reviews, right here on YouTube, we are the W2M Network, W2M. And then you'll find my subheading of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. I have a different name for every one of the podcasts that I do. It's Damn You Hollywood, TV Party Tonight, Triple Feature, Long Road to Ruin. So whatever type of thing I'm doing, it has its own title. I'm all about branding. So yes, W2M Network on YouTube, Radulich and Broadcasting Network. If you're just into audio only, Spotify, Apple Music, it's Radulich and Broadcasting Network. That's where you'll find all the podcasts.
Yeah, check it out. His TikToks are amazing. Amazing. They will definitely they'll make you think. They'll make you reflect, or the word Sherilyn used, that German word, rethink.
Duncan.
What is it said?
Duncan.
Dunkin' Donuts. Let's do it.
Something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, Sherilyn, thanks for keeping us company. Always enjoy it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. And you can find my stuff. Most of it's on my Substack. So it's Dr. Sherilyn H.T. Jones on Substack. So thanks, Miguel. Thank you, Mark. It was great meeting you.
It's great meeting you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. But yeah, we are at the end. Happy to see everybody on the chats. Glad you were here. And we will continue. Yes, our next GenX Wasteland will be about Elvis. Surprising nobody. We're going to see Elvis. You thought you saw Elvis as you hadn't seen him. We're going to explore even other dimensions of Elvis. So check it out. But in the meantime, as STP said, flies in the Vaseline we are. Sometimes it blows my mind. Keep getting stuck here. Take care, everybody, and good night.